Very good afternoon to all of you. And before commencing, a very happy new year 2024 to all of you. Uh, in the last three classes, we had gone through block one of the project management, which included three units: the basics of project project management we had already seen. So, at the beginning of this session of this year, we'll be moving into block 2 that comprises of project planning. That means before the actual implementation, what are the things necessary that we should carry out as a project manager so that our project is a successful venture. That is what we are going to see. So the unit 4 or the first unit of the block 2 is project scope management. So today we shall discuss the various aspects of project scope management. Now let us have an introduction to what we mean by project scope management, or in other words PCM in short form. As we have seen in the first module or the block 1, the basic characteristic of project is it is unique in nature. Why it is unique? Now it differs from other projects, maybe of dissimilar kind or of similar kind, in terms of the time taken to complete it, the cost associated in completion of the project, and the scope that it encompasses. When we are talking of scope, the scope is defined by how much time, how much is the cost, and what is the quality of deliverables that the project organization or the organization which is going to carry out the project will be able to hand over to the customer. Now, when we talk of time, we talk of the schedule. That means by what date we are going or estimating to complete it. Cost, what should be the estimated budget. And when we talk of quality, what is the nature or the value that we are generating out of the project. Now, at the beginning, we said it is a part of planning exercise. So before the actual execution is carried out regarding the project, we undertake the analysis of project scope management. What it means? Now, it is such a thing which draws a clear boundary with respect to all aspects of the project. When I say all aspects, I'll be meaning that what are the resources consumed, what is the time taken, what is the budget that we are having, and what are the deliverables. All these things comprise the aspects of the project, and we should have a boundary for every project, because if we don't have a boundary, then it becomes very difficult to stick to, suppose, the time frame, the budgeted cost, etc. It is a guide which helps us or the project team in order to execute the project successfully. Now, it is done at the planning stage. Once we have done it, we try to implement it so that the project can be successfully completed. It also summarizes all the related aspects. Now, what are the related aspects now? We can say stakeholders. We can say the society in general. We can say the environment, etc. Now, the project, how it encompasses all the related aspects that are associated with it. It also describes what we should do or should not do so that a project is successfully carried out. If certain activity of the project is in our do's, then yes, we shall go for the activity in the project. Any activity which is not required for the project or included under don'ts, then there is no point in having that kind of activity in the project. It is only wastage of resources in form of the time as well as the cost. The project scope statement should be very clear. Now, when we talked about scope, we said it is defined by time, cost, and quality. Now, when we are talking of project scope statement, we should clearly mention by what time or how much time it is going to take. What is the estimated budget of the project? What is the quality of the deliverables, or in other words, the goods and services that are going to be produced out of the project? In other words, what are the quality or the value for money for the outputs of the project? That should be clearly stated in form of project scope statement. Now, what is the definition of project scope? Now, project scope is a function of project objectives, needs, limitations, deliverables, resources, and budget. Now, taking all these aspects, objectives, why the project should be done. Needs, why the project is required. Or in other words, is there any gap it is going to fulfill? Limitations, can we carry out the project? Is it realistic? Deliverables, the outputs. It may be goods, it may be services, etc. Resources it is going to consume in form of, we can say, human resources, material resources, etc. And the budget part or the funding for the project. So, project scope is a function of all these items. That means it is related to all these aspects of a project. So, what are the key steps for defining project scope? We saw first the objectives. The objectives should be clearly defined. When we think of a project and we are at the planning stage, we should clearly mention what objectives should be achieved by the project once it is completed. That means, why shall we go for the project? Second is, we should create a sound resource plan. Now, what I mean by sound resource plan? The resource for a project in terms of human resources, in terms of material resources are required. Now, we should plan for where from shall we get the resource. Is it there with the project organization, or we are going to procure it from outside, or is it going to be supplied by some outside vendors? Similarly, human resources. It is not always that the project team or the project organization should be having all the human requirements or the human resources required for a project in-house. So it should go for having human resources who are, we can say, supplied by third-party organizations. Next step is budget requirement. Now, unless we know how much is the funds required for a project, it may vary, but a requirement which is, we can say, greatly or roughly to 100% accuracy as near as possible is better for the project organization, because we have to arrange for financial resources. It is not always that the organization has sufficient funds to meet the project requirements. So once we prepare the budget and its accuracy is as near as possible to 100%, the better is our financing. Or we can meet the budget requirements without any hindrances. Next key step is time durations. Now, project can be divided into various kind of activities. Now, we can break down a total complete project into various phases or activities. Now, for each activity, how much time it is going to consume, or for each phase of the project, how much time is going to be consumed, that we can estimate. While estimating this project time durations for various activities or phases of project, we shall be using various kind of techniques that we shall be learning in the latter units of this module or the block. Then next is project deliverables. When we say the deliverables, what is the outcome or the output that we are going to generate out of the project? This output can be in terms of your products as well as services. Now, the deliverables, as we know, the better is the quality, the better is the deliverables accepted in the society or in the marketplace. Next is define key milestones. A project is going to take a fair length of time. Now we can break down, as we said, in time durations, the project into various phases. Suppose a project is going to take 5 years to complete. So every 6-month period or semi-annual period, how much is the target that we are going to achieve? That should be planned for. This target can be in terms of activities, in terms of budget consumption also. So that we can know if we reach that within the given semi-annual period, then yes, we have achieved the milestones one by one. This will help us to complete the project within the given scope of time and cost. Next is, are there any constraints for the project? If there are constraints, what are the things or the items? One may say that yes, raw material is a constraint for the project that we are going to undertake. Then immediately we try to have a lookout for where from we can get the constraint in form of raw materials. That means whether it is from inside the country or we may procure it from outside. How can we overcome the constraint? So we are trying to look a way out how to manage the constraint. Constraints will definitely be there, but in the planning stage or defining project scope, we have to think of the way out, how to negate the constraint so that the project can be successfully carried on. Now, after having all this, it should be documented, because later on, while executing or actual action takes place in the project, there we shall be using the document as a guide. So we shall draft the scope documents and get it approved from all stakeholders. We have seen in the first block the various stakeholders for a project. It can be internal, it can be external. So we shall take the approval from all stakeholders, the scope document, before carrying out or executing the actual activities for a project. Now lastly, we also have a certain thing called as scope creep. What we mean by that? Now suppose, in the previous classes we are discussing about, yes, the metro rail project at Bhubaneswar. Now it is at a planning stage and it is going to be implemented as soon as possible. That means the actual work will start. However, many times it has been seen that while the project is going on or is being executed, demands of expansion of the scope in terms of what we can say, the reach to various customers, reach to various geographical segments gets expanded. What it impacts on the project? The project's time and cost will also get expanded, or it will become higher and higher. That is called as scope creep. Now, while defining project scope, we think of what are the various priorities of a project. Now, when we say priorities, that means what are the things that are important for a project. Now, project objectives answer what, when, and how much. Now, what? That means what? We can say that what the project will be delivering us in the long term after it is completed, or whom it is going to reach. In other words, it is the scope of the project. When? When means it talks of time. When the project is going to be started. How much time it is going to take to complete it, and then be handed over to the customer so that they can start the functioning of the thing. When we talk of how much, we are talking of how much we shall be spending. When we talk of spending, it is the cost. We estimate the cost of the project, so that is how much we shall be spending in the project. So the three main priorities of a project are, we can say, the time, then cost. Time is when, cost is how much, and scope is what the project is going to help, whom is it going to help. All these things will be answered under scope. Now, we can have three different scenarios of this priority for a project while defining project scope. Now let us see the priority scenario 1. Time is a constraint. Scope, that means how far is its reach, it is acceptable. Whatever it is, we can accept it. Cost, since time is a constraint, that means we have to complete it as fast as possible or within a deadline, which is, we can say, near to impossible to achieve that deadline of time. The cost will get enhanced definitely. Why? Because the faster you take up the work, the more you are going to spend. In this scenario 1, we can take the example of, all of us have seen the devastating impact of COVID during the last 3-4 years. When it first started, there was nothing called as any kind of vaccine to get a grasp on that. It was spreading, we can say, at a very faster rate, unimaginable way. So what it did, now it stopped the whole world if we are not mistaken, most of the world was brought to a halt. Everyone was forced to stay indoors unless until some kind of way out was taken out. What was the way out? Na? Developing some kind of medicines or vaccines which will help to negate the coronavirus. It was not there. So most of the medicine companies started on a war footing to develop vaccine. So their time was constrained. There was not much time because the more we make delays or the longer the time period is, the spread of the disease was high. So the time was constrained. Scope is, yes, let the vaccine be developed fast so that we can cater it to smaller segment of the society. So whatever is the scope, let us accept it first. Then as the production gets on higher, then we can go on for mass vaccination. Yes, due to this, the cost was very high. Then come to scenario 2. Time is a constant. Scope, sorry. Sorry. Scenario 2, time is a constant. Scope we should enhance and cost is acceptable. Now here, what kind of thing we can take as an example? For example, when government goes for various kind of developmental works which should cater to the society at the earliest, time is constrained. Why? Now the deliverables have to be given within a particular period. You cannot delay beyond that. Scope, it has to be catered to the larger segment of the society. As one by one segment of the society gets the benefits, some other segments of the society start asking for the benefits. So here the scope gets enhanced. And since it is a developmental work or social project, mostly we accept it. For example, nowadays in metros, there is a very awkward situation regarding traffics, vehicular traffics. In order to overcome that, many metro cities or tier 2 cities in India are going for metro rail, mainly which is overhead, not underground also, because underground takes much time. Now, this metro, once it reaches a particular place, the other place of the city starts demanding for that. So always we are thinking of how we can enhance the network of metro to all parts of the city. The scope gets enhanced. So whatever is the cost, We shall go for that, but maximum segment of the city should get this particular service and at a faster time. So time is a constant. Then scenario 3, time, whatever it is, let us accept it. Scope is a constant. Cost is acceptable. Now, what kind of example we can take here? If you think of a company called as SpaceX, which went into creation of this project on developing rockets which will carry astronauts, not the government funded ones, but astronauts who can pay for that. And they will go into the space and have a look around of this space, Earth also, for a particular time period, suppose 7 days, 8 days, and they will get back to the Earth. Now here, the time for the project is acceptable. Scope is a constant. Why? Because very few people in the world can afford to pay the kind of amount to book a place in that spaceship to go to space. It is too high a cost. Or in other words, the scope is limited to very few rich beyond imagination persons. So here the cost for the project is acceptable to them, or the cost to carry out the SpaceX project was acceptable to them. So time was acceptable, they are ready to wait to go to space, they are ready to pay the amount, whatever is needed, but not all the people in the society can get a chance to that. So the scope is a very constant one. It is targeted for very small segment of the society. Now, here we are talking of one of the important techniques which will help us to find out the time or the scope or the cost of a project. It is called as work breakdown structure. Before telling what is this work breakdown structure, WBS, almost all of us can create our own example with certain kind of any project, any item that is in front of us. For example, we'll be finding, suppose we are sitting in our study table and we take that our project is study table. There you will be finding, suppose the writing space is done by wood, the frame of the table is done by iron, and it is sold in the market. Now, the table is the main project, as I said, in front of us. And we try to see what are the various components associated with that. We saw a wooden platform at the top. Below that, the iron frame and various number of screws. Suppose I say around 10 screws per table are used to fix the writing wooden board to the iron frame. Now, there, let us see how we can talk about the time, the cost, as well as the scope. Now, first let us take time. Who will do the wooden writing platform? Now, the carpenter. Second is the iron frame. Who will do it? Now, the iron fabricator. Now, the screws, now the machinery tool houses, they will create the screws. Now, what the organization or the project organization will do? It will procure the boards from the carpenter, the frame from the fabricator, the screws from the organization, the machine tool organization, which is manufacturing that, and it will be fixing it and then sending it to the market. Now here, in order to create one table, how much time is being taken? Suppose a board takes 3 days to create. The iron frame takes 5 days to create. And the 10 screws are taking 2 days to create. Suppose I want to have one table, or my project is for a single table. What I will do? I will order the 3 vendors. Board is coming in 5 days. The frame is going to come in 10 days. So the maximum time taken is by the frame. Within that time, the carpenter as well as the vendor for the supplying of screws, they will be delivering us their items. Now, once the frame is received from the fabricator, we fix the board by using the screws immediately, so that we can say the project is accomplished in 10 days. We do not ask the fabricator, the iron fabricator, to create the table for us, the wooden board, or the carpenter, wooden carpenter is not asked to create the screws. So here responsibility is clear cut. We fix the responsibility according to their specialization, and they do it in a given time frame. Now all the activities are combined together to form our project, that is the wooden table in front of us. So time we have established. Now let us talk about cost. Suppose the board, wooden board, writing board costs us 200 rupees. The iron frame costs us 250 rupees. And the screws are costing us 50 rupees, the 10 screws. So the total cost of the table, it is immediately estimated that it is 500 rupees. Now scope, yes, the wooden table, who is it going to cater to? Now we can have different shapes and sizes of this wooden writing table. Is it for one person? Is it required for four persons? So depending on the scope, the time and cost will be varied. And the scope, from the very beginning, you can establish that yes, we are going to produce tables for being used by a single person. So accordingly, small size tables of given specifications can be done. Now what I have done, our project was a wooden writing table. What we have done, we have broken down that into three different components. One was the iron frame, the second one was the wooden board, the third one was the screws, the 10 screws used for a table. Now the writing board or the writing table for one person, which is our main project, is subdivided into three type of activities which get together to give us the final item, that is the writing table. Now our first level is the main project, that is the writing table. Now we go to the second level. It gives us the various items or activities that are needed to complete the project. So the iron frame, the wooden writing board and the screws, they come below the main project. So the main project, that is our writing table for one person, it is level 1. Below that, when we have subdivided into various components used for creating the table, that is 1, 2 and 3. One is the iron frame, the second is the wooden writing board, third is the screws, it is level 2. So here we can say, yes, it is a simple thing. Only 2 levels are there. Yes. For any project, we start from simple ones and we go to complex ones. Simple one, we can say level 1, level 2. As we move on to more and more complex projects, the levels gets increasing and increasing. Below level 2, level 3 will come. Below level 3, level 4 will come. Below level 4, level 5 will come. That means it will try to break down the whole project into small activities which get together at various levels in order to form the main project. And once we break down into the smallest activities, what happens? We get a better picture of the time, the cost and the scope estimates for the project. So this kind of structures are called as work breakdown structures or WBS. What is it? Now it is a tool that establishes a step-by-step approach for completing a project. As we discussed just now in our example, Also, I have an example on the screen which you shall see just now. Yes, it is a step-by-step approach for completing a project. It estimates time, cost, and scope of a project. Yes, definitely. And it is a hierarchical composition consisting of one more levels. Two, it is a simple project, a simple WBS work breakdown structure. More and more levels, we get into more and more complex projects. Here I have shown an example of a calculator in a simple way. There I have shown three levels. Level 1 is our main project, that is creation of a calculator or developing a calculator. Then level 2, what I have done as a project manager, I have divided into a calculator requires components and a display. When we say components, we know that components can be the printed circuit board inside, which does all the trick in the calculator or calculates all the thing for us. Then we have various kind of buttons on the calculator and the cover or the body of that. And display, nowadays we are using no more LCD, we can say LED also. What kind of display I am going to use on my calculator? Now you see, three levels are clearly here: level 1, level 2, level 3. You go to the lowermost level, that is PCB, buttons and body, and LCD. Now these are the main things which are required for our development of a calculator. So this is a work breakdown structure. What are its advantages? Now it is widely used. As we saw, it allows us for evaluation of cost, time, and performance also. That means what was the cost budgeted, and when the actual work will go on, how much is the cost it is consuming. Similarly, with regards to time, it helps in planning, scheduling, and budgeting. Go back to our example of the table. I said a table is taking 10 days for me to create. A customer comes today and gives the order for a table. So what I will do? I will plan for the items and I will tell the person that you come on 10th day from now so that you can get your table, and the cost would be this much. That means the budgeting part. It helps in coordinating various components and stakeholders. Just now we saw the example of the calculator in the previous slide. There, various components at different hierarchical levels are shown. So the last level will show you what are the basic components that are needed to develop a calculator. Similarly, talking of stakeholders in a project, we can talk about deliverables of a project. Now, who are the stakeholders? Level 2 we can take, level 3 we can take. In what way they are going to be affected, or how they are going to get benefits out of the project. Similarly, it enables management with required information. Now, when I saw the chart of a calculator, as you saw also on the previous slide, immediately you can say next time by looking at the chart of the WBS of a calculator. Now, these are the things required. So, it makes the task easier. This kind of structures are also used in organizational structures, and people are assigned responsibilities at various levels. The hierarchical levels, who is going to report who is going to have what kind of subordinates, all these things will be clearly mentioned. So it is also a tool for organizational breakdown structure. Now, we saw the example of the calculator in the previous slide. We talk of work packages. We saw three levels of hierarchy. Level 1 calculator, level 2 the components and display, level 3 or the last level comprised of components which includes PCB and buttons and the body, and the display was comprising of LCD display. So what is an work package? No, it is nothing but it is the lowest level of work breakdown structure which gives quantifiable parameters. Now we can quantify easily how much is the time or how much is the cost or how much are the various resources going to be used in the project. Let us look at the example. Suppose the project calculator, developing a calculator, has a cost of 10 lakh rupees or 1 million rupees. We have estimated components should be 70% and display should be comprising of 30% of the estimated cost. Sorry. Now when we look at components at the level 3, PCB is 30%, buttons and body you see 40%. So 30 plus 40 gives us the total components are 70%. In other words, PCB is 30% of the main 10 lakh rupees, that is 3 lakh rupees. Buttons and body are 40%, that is 4 lakh rupees. When we add them, it gives us 7 lakh in terms of components. Correct? Then we talk of LCD, which is comprising of 3 lakhs of the budgeted cost. You see, display is 3 lakhs or 30%. Now, finally, we are going to look at something called as responsibility matrix. Now, there are many things, many activities where either we are responsible or we are assigned a supervision duty. Responsibility means we take up all the things, how it will be done. If anything goes wrong, I am going to be blamed.